Now, we're going to talk a bit about the third man in this fight. He'll probably be there, although he won't be in the ring. Or he might be in the ring after the fight, who knows, on Saturday. And that's Anthony Joshua. We thought he was the forgotten man after getting starched by Daniel Dubois, but it seems like everyone's still talking about him, particularly in relation to Tyson Fury, depending on what happens on Saturday night. But I'm going to hand over to Eamon. Eamon, what do you think Anthony Joshua's ideal outcome is on Saturday night, and where does he fit into the future once that outcome takes place?
Yeah, absolutely. The ideal outcome for Anthony Joshua is that Tyson Fury beats Oleksandr Usyk and he gets the unified heavyweight titles. Anthony Joshua is the next man to take on Tyson Fury, and we finally get that fight that we've been waiting for many a year. Thought we were at that fight, that juncture, but then the arbitration was won by Deontay Wilder, and we had another iteration of Wilder and Tyson Fury. But the path now seems to be clear now that Anthony Joshua's lost to Daniel Dubois. Boxing does work in completely strange ways to tie up these threads, and it will be a huge fight nonetheless if the two do get into the ring. But there is the understanding, at least the general consensus from boxing fans and those in the industry now, that it's definitely past its best. Not quite past its best as Kell Brook and Amir Khan were, which had flitted on for many a year, and we finally got that. And Kell Brook had his hand raised against his longtime rival Amir, who'd goaded him for many a year, and finally delivered that fight. It's not quite there, but it is definitely past where it could have been. The stakes are definitely a lot more different. Neither currently hold titles. One might hold titles, but that shine, that sheen, the undefeated sheen as well has gone from both fighters, and had gone a while back from Anthony Joshua. But he now finds himself in the position where we're led to believe that he will be the guy who takes on Tyson Fury if he wins or loses. It makes more sense if Fury was to lose, that the two would then fight, and maybe have that money fight, that final out fight, seeing where either fighter is. But that's what it would be. It would be a huge money spinner fight, and we'd hope that we'd get one of them in Wembley, the home of British boxing, outside of course your call, but the biggest stage in British boxing. And then you'd expect maybe the rematch, or at least one of the fights, to happen in Riyadh over in Saudi Arabia. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense if Tyson Fury was to beat Oleksandr Usyk this weekend, that Anthony Joshua will be the next man in line. He holds no mandatory to that belt. He's just come off the back of a defeat to Daniel Dubois. Surely you look at it and you'd want the trilogy fight between Oleksandr Usyk and Fury if Fury was to win, or you'd want the winner of Daniel Dubois versus Joe Parker, who holds the other belt in the four belt era. He'd be the one who's next in line for that shot, that opportunity, and that's where some of the mixed signals come in boxing right now, because we have to give credit where credit is absolutely due, that a lot of big fights are happening and fights are getting made, and those who are avoided are being put in positions where money is now no longer an issue, and they can't talk about money or stature because they're getting paid better than what they were beforehand, and those fights can now be made. There's no roadblocks in that sort of sense, and promoters don't hold roadblocks anymore or power of position, because they're pushing towards one kind of unified goals to get themselves paid and get their fighters opportunities. So those roadblocks don't appear to be there. And this idea of, like I've said here before in the Seconds Out Live, previous iterations, previous episodes, I've said, like, this idea of UFC-ifying boxing seems to be like a good move in terms of getting like a one ranking, one kind of belt, one set of rankings for fighters to understand who kind of fits where in amongst the puzzle of boxing across four governing bodies, five if you include the IBO, but four is the main ones. If you can consolidate that down into one, then you have those proper rankings, and you'll be able to kind of decide who's number one, who's next in line, who's, and etc. down the rankings. So if you're doing that, and then you put in Daniel Dubois, who's defending his title in the voluntary against what seems to be the highest rank or the toughest opponent there, at least someone who's in form as well. So in Joe Parker, you can't complain about that. That seems like you go in the right direction. But then if you go the direction of Fury wins and then you put AJ in with him, it kind of goes against what the direction seems to be going in. So mixed signals. I do get that. I also do get that a lot of boxing fans have wanted and do want Fury and AJ in some form. And I can't say that I don't want it either. I'll be forefront and honest with that. That is a fight I do want to see, but not out of the opportunity to go for another undisputed fight, or not out of the opportunity, I think, maybe for another rematch, the trilogy fight with Oleksandr Usyk. I think Anthony Joshua finds himself having to, I think, with respect to a guy who has done a lot for the sport, I think it has to be said, and has bought big fights, big nights in the sport. I think he's got to wait in line, or at least he's got to force the issue and force himself into the position. That's the way the rankings work. That's the way the belts work. Just being the money man here, when the money's enough to go around, I think it doesn't hold as much play, at least for a boxing fan. It's different on the business terms, and I get that. I'm not included, and I don't really care about the business terms. I don't really care what either fight is making here. But in this idea of UFCifying the whole of boxing, which I'm certainly not against, it does kind of fly in the face of that. So we'll see if Joshua does get the opportunity. We'll see if he's even ready for the opportunity. You'd think that going into a fight of that magnitude, you might want one in between as well. We will see if Fury, the man who might indeed hold the power, especially if he holds the belts, wants to give Anthony Joshua that opportunity as well. We'll see if more games don't get played as well. But look, for me, Joshua's got to force himself. He's got to accept himself in a position. It's not one that's warranted through reputation or what you've done before. I think it's got to be earned. And right now, I think Dubois, Parker, or even Usyk would stand themselves in a better position.
Hi guys, I'm back. The Keggy says no one should support AJ seeing as he bottled the Dubois rematch. The official word is that he had a few small injuries that meant he couldn't get back in time for February. We have to kind of take him at his word unless we hear, good evidence that it wasn't the case. Andy Gomez says AJ needs to build himself back up, which echoes from what I heard, Eamon's sentiments. He does not deserve a title fight with his recent performances. Stephen says Eamon Khan looking like a pimp daddy today. Do we still say pimp daddy in 2024? What's happening, pal? Styling and profiling. Oh, lovely little Ric Flair reference there. You have got a certain Ric Flair about you today, Eamon. A certain Flair, anyway.
I've never had any Ric Flair about me, apart from maybe using Ric Flair on the old Here Comes the Pain, WWE 2K 7, 8, 9, whatever, until I stopped playing those games.
With a tear